All right, it looks like we are live. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Films and Fandoms. I'm Kaylee, and we're back with a new episode. We're once again going to be talking about Leverage, Season 2, Episode 5, The 3 Days of the Hunter Job. So before we get started on this episode, I just wanted to thank our sponsor, NAFCO.org. And if you want to support the podcast financially, you can buy us buy a coffee on Ko-Fi, Films and Fandoms. And let me get the link for you guys. So that way, you guys can click the link to buy a coffee on Ko-Fi, and that, once again, supports the podcast, goes towards me, and also Alex while we do these. So, the episode once again, the episode we're going to be talking about today is the 3 Days of the Hunter Job. And sorry, I'm adjusting. Hi, Typist Fat Productions, aka Adam Ristow. Thank you for joining. Yeah, yep, it's me. Alex may actually be joining us in next week's episode. Fortunately, today she has some stuff come up, so she wasn't able to join us. It's pink lemonade, I promise. Mostly. But on this episode of Films and Fandoms, Kaylee, we're again talking the 3 Days of the Hunter Job. So in this episode, Sophie actually will take the lead on this con to take down a ruthless reporter who took down an innocent bus driver. So to do this, the team has to delve into the world of conspiracy theories. So it should be a little bit of an interesting episode tonight. The director for this episode is Mark Roskin. The writers for this episode, John Rogers, Chris Downey, and Melissa Glenn, one half of the writing duo Glenn Reeder, who, as we see once again, I love saying this trivia fact, who we actually see. So Glenn and Reeder are actually, well, they use it as the name of a safe company in the universe. And I believe they also use it in librarians. I feel like they use it for librarians too. So that just goes with my stone triplet theory. Now we just need Almost Paradise season 3 so we can connect them all. But so we open with this it's kind of a really rough intro, I'm not gonna lie. Monica Hunter, who is actually played by Beth Broderick, who you guys will know as Aunt Zelda in Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I believe actually both versions, the OG from back in the day and the newer Netflix series too. Coda, I am live. I am live. Sorry, Coda is making noises, wanting attention. Anyways. So Monica Hunter, she's accusing this bus driver of being at fault for this tragic bus accident that did take the lives of 2 children, saying he had mental illness. And we see his daughter finding him after a suicide attempt. So we find out during this client meeting, Renee and Sophie are talking with the daughter, that this bus driver, his name's Ray Pennington, he was cleared of everything by the cops, and it was ruled mechanical failure, but like it had been eating at him, and that Monica Hunter decided to use him as her next villain. And instead of actually asking for money, this client, in a slight twist, asks for her father's reputation back, which I believe this is the first time. Yes, this is the first time in Leverage where the team isn't after an object or money. Their goal for the client is to get a man's reputation back. So that's interesting. And then, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning, Sophie decides she wants to take the lead for this con after her breakup in the last episode. And Nate's a bit of a hypocrite because she just wants some like control. And Nate's like, no, like, no, and she needs to challenge Nate tells Sophie about needing control and all that. So yeah. And ironically, I was kind of told the same thing from my therapist earlier this week about the whole control thing because I told her how I was hating that I have a lot of things going on in my life and I don't have a lot of answers yet. And I told her how it like drove me crazy that like I didn't have answers for anything. It's like, you've like cope with trauma by planning and you can't plan things that, and that's why I was like, well shit, there goes my Nate. There goes maybe a Nate. And it's getting called out again on my TV shows. But yeah, and of course I love it. Sophie at the end of the meeting says, "Let's go get this bitch," because Sophie's always been that girl. People need to start putting some more respect on her name. She's always been that girl. So yeah, briefing. Uh, the team isn't exactly happy to find out that Sophie's taking the lead right now. And so Parker's the grifter. And keep in mind the last times Parker was the grifter, she stabbed a guy with a fork. So yeah. And Ellie immediately is like, oh, I'm sorry, am I the only one who remembers the last time Sophie took the lead? You know, when we had to blow up the offices. Sophie's like, that's not fair. And Hardison still a little bit hurt about blowing up the offices in the season one finale, the first David job. Which, because it's been a while since they've talked about this episode, to slightly recap, at the end of that episode, Sophie reveals that she was really wanting, because she had the second David, and so she was using the team to get the second David. And so they were very pissed about all that. And they're still like kind of overcoming that trust. And so they eventually move on, and Nate still does his hardest to run it. And we find out more about Monica Hunter, how she's this like reporter who does like this expose show where she picks someone and basically turns them into the boogeyman, as Hardison describes it. So Sophie has her plan right now is to come up with a fake story that Monica will want to run in order to command respect because that's like what they discover she wants. And they've also found out that like they also want her to get discredited, which Elliot likens what they're doing to like finding out a crooked cop. All his cases go out the window. And Nate once again has to control his control freaks, and they discover also that she wants to be a legit reporter, which is why Sophie comes up with this plan to discredit her and then come up with a news story that will command respect. And Sophie's rallying cry, she is pack her bags. We're going to DC to make news. So they go to the Pentagon. Well, first they go to Monica's office, and Parker gets her press badge. She's like, "Yeah, I got it easy." And so it's like, "No, Parker, you're supposed to get caught with it." So Parker ends up like banging against the desk to get Monica's attention. Monica comes over. She leaves, and she tries to hook Monica by telling her she has a story that will take down the president. And of course, Hardison's playing the source that's like a conspiracy theorist. So all I needed was a freaking tinfoil hat. I love Aldous Hodge. And so in order to prevent Monica from leaving and to have more merit to the story, Elliot just acts as his normal shady self, which is kind of funny that they basically told Elliot, okay, you're just be you. I find it kind of funny because Elliot can kind of come off as shady as hell. But yeah, so Hardison, uh, he tries telling the story that like the government's building secret prisons, so like prisoners are hiding underneath people's houses, and Monica is kind of on, but she's hooked enough that she's willing to continue on with the story. And of course, Nate has to judge Sophie when she says, "We need to steal a general." And he's like, "No, it's like it's a rallying cry, like let's go steal a general." So yeah, because Nate has control issues. So Elliot has to uh, steal a actual general's badge. Yeah, actually, it's kind of cool. He uses a pencil that has like a magnet eraser tip, and then he just kind of like taps it against the badge to take it off him, and like tells this like real general that a project of his is about to be axed, and so they clear out the office. Nick goes in. Monica and Sophie come up, even though Elliot once again revealing his shady ass, which helps sells Monica on the story. Monica, after they interview Nate, who basically is like, "Get the fuck out of my face" a little bit. um, uh, they go to the office then, and Monica uh, uncovers this evidence that was obviously planted probably by Nate. And so they go to, or they have Monica go and, or the plan was for Monica to reveal the story live on air so that they have something to discredit her with. But during the next show, Parker and Hardison show up and they find out she doesn't really, uh, she doesn't tell the story. It's some other story. And so, uh, yeah, Monica basically, when Parker and Hardison go up, be like, "No, like, why didn't you tell the story?" Like, Monica's like, "No, like, it's not scary enough. Presidents make people feel safe. Monica Hunter's viewers want, they want to be scared." And Sophie's like, "All right, if she wants fear, then let's sell a bitch some fear." So would be where things escalate, and Nate, he's kind of leans forward in his shirt. He's like, "This is how it begins." Because Sophie's now gotten a taste and she wants to put Monica down like a rabid dog. Which honestly, I don't blame Sophie on because I too would want to put Monica down. So Parker, so now, so they got to escalate this. So first, Uh, they start by Parker standing outside Monica's office, calling her, being like, "Hey, I just got a call from the general. There's more to the story than we thought." And Monica's like, kind of calls bullshit a bit and isn't buying it. And then, but it's enough to get her to look at Parker. And then Elliot runs Parker over, acting as his, shady ass, and steals this red file off of her. And that red file does come into play a bit because they're trying to sell Monica that there's more to the story that's like conspiracy level stuff. So uh, then Hardison comes up and he's acting as a mailman. It was funny. He's like, it's never, like they never look at the mailman, trying to hide. And so they go to, Hardison confirms, like, yes, the general like called. He wants to meet. So Hardison and eats with, takes Monica to this like meetup spot where Nate's still playing the general. And Nate pulls on his whole like shady, there was a breach, an incident, type of thing to try and scare. Just like, incident, come on, like don't spin me. And like Nate plays on her like need for respect and is like, tells her the story about how like these like bunkers, they were like these like cells that they were building weren't prison cells, they were bunkers for the elite, and that something got in the water. Basically they're trying to make her paranoid. And so he tells her then towards the end that like everything that that it was that Parker had everything in this red file, which Elliot took. And so Monica's like, yeah, like they took it off her dead body. And they start like so they start trying to spin her and she's hooked. Well, kind of hooked, but then like they go back and Sophie and Hardison's trying to control what sources she goes to because Sophie's like, we need to like she needs to corroborate her own story. Like she needs to corroborate this. And so Hardison sets it up so she could only go to the source they control. And we see uh, the source kind of accidentally helps sells Monica on the story by they call this project Destiny. And what's funny is they reveal that Destiny for this like congressman that Sophie or that Monica goes to meet up. Destiny isn't some super secret government project. It is the name of a stripper. The song "Shaking Hands" by Nickelback coming to mind? Anybody? Because we know the judge went easy on her because he paid for it yet. uh, that is a good song though, and I should not have been listening to that as 9 years old. But it's actually kind of funny because I hung out with my mom and I asked her, like, why did you let me listen to this song at like 9 years old? And she just shook her shoulders, like, oh no, like, you just like the beat, you didn't understand the lyrics. Like, yeah, at 9 years old, I was listening to a song about freaking strippers and giving a blowjob because my mom's a Nickelback fan, and so I listen to Nickelback. But yeah, so I immediately thought of "Shaking Hands" by Nickelback. But yeah. So Monica, she's realizing that maybe there's some merit to this, and she starts slowly going insane. And of course, team starts to get worried, like, maybe Sophie, like, you don't have this under as control as you thought. And it's almost to prove them right. Monica starts knocking on the door, so they have to all hide. Hardison is, playing this character. Monica's like, you have to take me to one of these bunkers. We need footage of them. And so Hardison's kind of forced to go with her to sell the story. So he leaves with her. And they all give Sophie as they walk out a "told you so" look. But and they've all realized that, yeah, they may have pushed too hard, which is actually the first time this happens. But they arrive. Hardison, I mean, they kind of managed to get Hardison and Parker to, or they get Hardison and Monica to like what they feel like it would be a sufficient enough bunker to get Monica to buy it. And they then has the problem of going to go get him using an ID that's already been reported stolen. Of course, Sophie's like trying to walk him through that. Hardison's also stuck in an interrogation cell room. Monica's in another one, just sounding all kinds of crazy, being like, I know about the bunkers. And then Hardison's like, I am going to jail. Like, I am a black man on a video camera. And on an army base, I am going to jail forever. But no, like, Hardison actually has to walk Elliot through how to hack in order so Hardison can scare his interrogator. And then Nate ends up getting them both out by claiming that, like, they're just running a test. And uh, so as they're running out, and it didn't help that, like, it kind of did help, but everyone at the base realizes that Nate isn't actually who they thought he was, so they start chasing Nate and Hardison. Nate takes Hardison and they go to another vehicle. Monica gets in her vehicle. They agree to meet up at the apartment. But when Monica meets up, or they agree to drive separate vehicles, Hardison goes separately with his car. Nate takes Monica in another car. And they meet up at the apartment. And they've already like cleaned out the apartment. And then Elliot comes out wearing like this leather apron. And then they act like they're about to like, they imply that basically like Hardison's character, well, Hardison, air quotes, is now dead. And Monica's about to be next. So Monica pepper sprays Nate's ass, because he calls Elliot like Earl. And it's like, goodbye, Earl. I mean, come on. That's too obvious. But yeah, Nate gets pepper sprayed, and of course, Nate's like groaning and like coughing because pepper spray fucking sucks. And Monica gets out of there like a bat out of hell. And of course, Elliot starts chuckling with me like, good thing Parker switched that out with water. And it's like, nope, he didn't. Nope, he didn't. Nope, she didn't. Nope, she didn't. And then Elliot starts coughing because he's starting to like get a whiff at the pepper spray. So Elliot's got to go help Nate wash up. But either way, Monica then goes to her station. She kind of she interrupts the broadcast to report this like breaking news. But Hardison, I'm assuming it's Hardison because it deals with hacking, and they set it up to where it looks like Monica's slowly going insane, and that she's on antipsychotics to like buy into this whole like she's like become unhinged. And screaming like, it's in the water, they're trying to get me, it's in the water. And yeah, then we see that the bus driver gets his good name back, so yay. And this episode kind of ends on like a sweet note because we see Elliot He's chopping up some bell peppers. I'm assuming for some amazing dish he's cooking. Okay, Kane, Christian Kane, you need to release a cookbook, like actual cook, not Kane's Kitchen on that website. You need an actual cookbook. Okay, you need an actual cookbook because I would probably buy that and make some of your things. I started cooking earlier this week because I got spices. Yes, I did. I know I'm very stereotypical, the white girl who does not have spices. I have spices now, guys. I promise. Okay, I got spices. You just can't see them because they're in my kitchen. My kitchen's behind me. I know, but I got spices now. Finally, I got spices. Okay, I'm not that wet girl anymore. Though I need more spices. I'm working on it, okay? I have to slowly build up the collection, okay? Okay, I have to slowly build up the collection. But so yeah, Parker's asking Elliot about like these conspiracy theories, and Harson's getting in on this while swirling some orange soda in a wine glass, which I find kind of funny. And Elliot looks really fucking good cooking. I will say that. I want that man in front of me cooking, preferably with the apron and the bandana. Don't judge me. Okay, don't judge me. So yeah, but then Nate kind of takes goes to talk with Sophie aside while Parker and the boys are talking about conspiracy theories. And Sophie and Nate have a bit of a heart to heart where Sophie's like, like it was fun, but like it wasn't her. And she's still trying to figure out what that is. And Nate's like, like I'm here, like when you, like I'm here because like you carried my drunk ass for a year. Least I can do is help you. And so Sophie's like, isn't it ironic? Because Nate asked her to trust him. And Sophie's like the one who betrayed all of them. So it's ironic that Nate's asking her for her trust. And of course, then Nate's like, you know, that was when he says something nice about me. She's like, don't ruin the moment. And I think it's kind of sweet because this shows that Sophie's, it's more firmly planted that like Sophie at this point, she thought if she thought she could be somebody else for once, she could figure out who she was, and she realized very quickly that being the mastermind isn't her. And I find that kind of interesting because I've kind of said it before, and I'll say it again. But so because this is a prevalent theme that keeps coming up, all in Leverage and then into Redemption. Because if you remember in Leverage Redemption season one, episode one, no, episode two, sorry, the Panamanian monkey's job. Sophie tells Hardison that like I thought if I like now this is in the context of she's still grieving Nate, even though it's been a year since he passed. She's still grieving him in Redemption, and she tells Hardison like I thought if I wore like a mask and if I acted okay, that would be okay. And like it created a handhold, but like it's not fixing that like what she feels inside. And she's sort of lost herself again in the grief, and now she's still trying to find herself. But now she's still trying to become this like new person because she has to find herself without Nate's shadow, which I think is like a really beautiful story when it comes to season two and even season three, because season two, Sylvie struggles with like her past, and then season three of Redemption. So everything's kind of all put together where Sophie's like, they come to the conversation, what happens now? Because like, we've been doing this, like they've been doing that for like over 10 years at this point. They, they keep putting band-aids on things instead of just like fixing the part in a way. And that's what they're struggling with is, well, how can we fix the part when the whole damn system's broken? And so that's kind of the question they deal with then. And once we finally get to redemption, I'll expand upon that a bit more. But in the context of this episode, Sophie's starting to realize, like, okay, this mastermind mask that she wore to like pretending to be Nate is not her. And she's still trying to figure out, you know, the real her because she's spent so long being Sophie Devereaux, she doesn't actually know who she is anymore. And we never find out her real name. Everyone just calls her Sophie. Even though the team, like, even when the team canonically knows her real name, she never tells him. Like, we never find out. And I think that's kind of the point is to them, she's Sophie. You know, she doesn't need to be who she was. She needs to be who, you know, they don't want her to be like Ishro's, you know, they want her to be like the girl they know. And I found that interesting, especially as someone who went through a bit of an identity crisis because I focused on so long on surviving and just taking what I can and living for everyone else, that it took me a long time to figure out like what makes me happy, what do I want. And now that I'm not in survival mode anymore, you know, I want to be an actress. I want to keep uh you know, I want to be filming things. I want to keep making things. I like creating. That is my thing. And I'm trying to get back into writing. It is a slow process because right now I'm really fatigued. um, I promise I'm okay. Just when you work straight, like for a long time straight, and like you work for like 5 days straight, and then crash 2 days. It it gets kind of exhausting trying to do stuff before or after work, and it just gets exhausting. And with my energy already being low and me using my energy up faster due to my cardiac condition, it is a bit of a lot, but I make it work, and I promise I'm going to try to keep releasing my fan fiction chapters and try writing something new because actually before I joined, I started reading a new romance book, which is something I haven't done before. So I'm trying new things. And yeah, so well, anyways, that's kind of the end of the actual like leverage episode. So kind of some final notes I have for this episode. So actually the name of this episode, The 3 Days at the Hunter Job, actually comes from a movie uh called 3 Days of the Condor, which is a spy movie starring Robert Redford, who tries to survive. He plays a CIA agent who tries to survive after accidentally uncovering this big government conspiracy. So that's where the name of this episode comes from. And this won't be the last time that we see where the team pushed too hard and it goes wrong. The first one I'm thinking of where this happens is the White Rabbit job that is in season 5 because they pushed the mark way too hard. And I'll talk more about that, like why that's significant when I get to that episode. But yeah. And yeah, and once again, I'm going to mention how I love how her identity arc even carries on into redemption. except with the different context of Sophie's navigating grief and how she's navigating grief. And I do kind of find it ironic that Elliot's cover for this episode is basically just be your shady self and act like you used to, because it's kind of funny. I also like how, because like I kind of like how they get into like the conspiracies a bit in this episode, because earlier in the episode, Parker even tries talking to Elliot about it, be like, no, not all wage wars were fought by members of the council. And then Elliot plays into it, being like, I can't confirm or deny that, Parker. Parker's like, Elliot, are you part of the council? And then she's like, be like, Nate, is Elliot part of the council? And it's like, and he's like, I don't fucking know. And so I like that because it reminds me a bit that like these are characters who never once had a normal childhood. And uh, anyways, yeah, the kind of the three kids of the group get into these government conspiracies or these conspiracy theories reminds me of the fact that these are characters who never had normal childhoods. You know, Elliot was adopted, and he not only had to grow up fast, being, you know, after like, knowing he was like adopted, and also like dealing with that, and also trying to live in his father's shadow and trying to be something he wasn't, to hardest and also growing up in the or to hardest and growing up in the foster system, and probably dealing with bullying and just being a black man in America, and also like taking care of his nana and being so good at something so fast and never quite feeling like he belonged anywhere. And Parker, also, growing up a street kid, basically being raised as a thief from the time she was 10 years old. So she never had a child, but like she never graduated. Like none of like Elliot's the only like semi normal childhood you could argue, but that's only because he was like the high school athlete, football player, good old boy, working on daddy's ranch and working at his dad's hardware store. And Hardison, I guess you can kind of also argue he had a normal one, other than the fact he grew up in the foster system. But Elliot, I think, is the most, only because he didn't have to, like, he just had to deal with like normal family stuff. Hardison had to deal with, uh, like, I would say, like the harder things. And I say that, or like the tougher things that had it, like, that could have very easily took him down a different path had he let it, but he didn't. But Parker definitely had the most non-normal childhood growing up. But it's nice to be reminded a bit that, like, in a way, like these are still like broken people, but they're finding some like childlike aspects and talking about something as silly as government conspiracies and like conspiracy theories. And I think more people need to be talking about that. How like some of these scenes, looking back at it's like these are people who are still trying to heal like their inner child by doing things they probably never got to do. Like you think Elliot was like on his farm talking about like conspiracy theories with like his siblings or like like he spent his whole life trying to like impress his father, and then he did the one thing his father forbid him to do in order to try and impress him, and it backfired on him. And then like he still experienced like he it wasn't until he saw his father again in the fracture job that he finally got rid of that shame. And I feel like it'd be more appropriate to expand on that when we get into like the episodes where we bring up Aaliyah's father a bit more, like the corkscrew job in season 5, and the fracture job when we get to Leverage Redemption. But yeah, I feel like this episode also had some really nice pacing and had like a natural progression to it. Like I didn't feel like it was like super rushed or super slow. And I also like how I mean you get the classic like you have to hate Monica, and but at the same time like you because you hate her so much you don't feel bad that she basically goes insane and gets arrested, and no one would believe her if she explained anything because she sounds crazy. But at the same time, you like she drove an innocent man to try and kill himself because of the guilt she placed on him by accusing him of being at fault for an accident that killed 2 kids, even though he had been legally cleared by police because it was road mechanical failure. Like he like that, like still like fuck, like that's not something you get over easy. And I'm not gonna. And I do have a bit of a personal connection with something like that, but I'm not going to go into it because once again, that's personal, and I don't want to be sharing other people's personal business who I don't have consent to be sharing their personal business. I'm only going to share my personal business, and I do understand like a bit of like guilt for something that wasn't your fault, and I say that because the night my the day my parents officially separated, there was a massive fight, and I hid in my room when things got really bad, and I felt guilt for a long time over running and hiding because I saw myself as a coward for doing that, and I hated feeling like that. But with therapy and understanding and growing up a little bit, I understood that like I didn't need to anymore because it wasn't my fault, and I survived, and I did what I thought. Like I did what like my body was meant to do, and I did what instincts normally do. Because people don't realize there's 3 modes: fight, flight, fight, or freeze. I chose flight. There's no shame in choosing any of them. You don't have to fight all the time. It's natural to freeze or run. So yeah, but I still don't feel bad about Monica. I mean, she was a cunt who treated everyone like bad. So yeah, and I use that word. I don't care. But yeah, really. Well, this episode didn't really do much for the other characters besides Sophie, and actually a bit of Parker because we see her step out of her comfort zone again being the grifter, which also ties into what will happen later when Sophie ends up leaving, and what prompts us to meet Tara Cole, who uh, will be introduced in a few episodes here, at who's a grifter. So basically, that's why, because Parker's not comfortable yet grifting, and she's not a very good grifter just yet. That's why Sophie needs to bring on Tara. And I'll delve into more into that when we meet Tara. But yeah, I mean, Hardison didn't really get any development this episode. But yeah, Hardison, Elliot does well. Elliot doesn't really change throughout the show. I mean, what's interesting is Elliot doesn't change in the big ways like Parker will do. Elliot changes in his subtle ways. He stops being like less grumpy at the world. He starts wearing his emotions on his sleeve more. Like, do you think season 2 Leverage Elliot would be looking at season 2 Redemption Elliot? Like, honestly, like season 2 Leverage Elliot would not have cried the way Elliot did in Leverage Redemption season 2, The Fracture Job. Because the way Elliot cried in that episode, that's like, that wasn't, single man tear type, cry. That was like full on Elliot. Yeah, that was full on Elliot. Something was healing in Elliot. And for the first time, he didn't need to carry that weight anymore that he once had when dealing with his father. He waited 30 fucking years for that moment. And thank fuck they got they got Keith David to play Elliot's father. Because I don't think there's another character or another actor who could play Elliot's father the way Keith David did. Because that was fucking, I would say, some of the best acting I've seen from Christian. And I was so fucking amazing. And why I love that episode so much, because it's just so, it's very healing for Ellie, and it was healing for me. And but it also shows how Ellie doesn't change in these like big ways. Like Parker, she goes from like a kind of wild child, not knowing where she fits in, struggling with her identity, to the woman we see in Redemption, where she's confident about herself. She's a leader. She's taken charge. She is confident in her abilities, and she also isn't afraid to talk to people. And she isn't afraid to tell Hardison. She isn't afraid to tell Hardison she loves him, and is not afraid to be vulnerable anymore. And even with like Hardison, we see him being this like cocky kid to being confident, smarter, wiser, and also not afraid to go after what he wants. But those are like very big changes. Elliot has the more subtle changes that you don't notice until he has that big emotional moment. And like season 3, he has one of those. Season 5, we see that. Even season 4, we see some of that. He has these like subtle changes that you don't really pick up on until he has those big moments. Even like Sophie, she also doesn't change Uh, I mean, Sophie doesn't change subtly. We see her change in these big ways throughout the seasons. But yeah, I'm kind of rambling at this point, so I think I'm going to start wrapping up. So I once again want to thank our sponsor, nafco.org. If you want to support the podcast, you could go on our Ko-Fi, Films and Fandoms. I have a link on in the comments if you want to go to the comments to click the link. Sorry, I'm just verifying some while I'm talking. Probably a bad idea, but I don't give a fuck. So, we also have a Discord. That is the invite code. Yeah. Our Instagram is F and Fandoms with Kaylee and Lex. Our, I guess, X, Twitter/X account is F and Fandoms. Our Facebook is also Films and Fandoms if you want to follow us on there to know when we have an episode coming up. This is my personal website, kayleesantalagden.com. I promise I'm going to do a update on that because I got to do a lot of updates and I probably need to start blogging. Either way, I need to do something with that. You can also follow me on Twitter, MissMovieFan_67. Also, I'm on TikTok, MovieFan_67. Alex is on Instagram at Alex_the Alley Cat if you want to show her some love. She's also on Twitter at Alex the Alley Cat and on TikTok as Alex the Alley Cat. And I probably need to update this again because I forgot to do that. But if you want to go support our friends at the Ma Filmworks Company, there's some great people doing some amazing projects. Go follow them on Facebook. Show them some love. And yeah, shout out once again to Adam Ristow. I don't think he's on still. But thank you anyways for joining and leaving a comment. And thank you for giving me my shot. My Filmworks. So the next episode, we're gonna keep doing leverage for a while. I don't know if I quite mentioned this in the last episode, but it was taken under advisement that I finish one show before moving on to another one, which is what I should have done, except I'm very scatterbrained. So we're gonna keep doing leverage. So next leverage episode we're gonna be talking about next week. We're gonna be talking about this next week, same time. We're gonna be talking leverage season 2, episode 6, called The Top Hat Job. So we're gonna be doing a bit of magic. And also dealing with corporations and how that works. And hopefully Alex will join us next week. I did message her earlier today. She just had a work today, and she also had some plans for after work, which is why she didn't join us today. But she did mention about wanting to join next week. And I have a feeling the episode after that, because that's going to be the 2 Live Crew Job. So then after that, we're going to be talking season 2, episode 7, the 2 Live Crew Job. Which I have a feeling Alex is going to want to join for that one. And if you know, you know. So, yeah, but next week's going to be the Top Hat Job, which should be quite fun. So, yeah, I guess I don't have anything else to say. So, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.